Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. How's it going, Eric?
It's going. It's birthday week here.
Happy birthday!
I'm doing all the birthday things. My birthday is, I took the week off of work. So that's my birthday gift to myself. And I also went and motored to Micro Center yesterday and got a cheap refurbished laptop, put Fedora 42 on it, and I've been rocking Linux all day. And it's been smooth sailing.
Nice.
And for the avid listener, you might have heard that I was trying Arch. Well, I'm not anymore. I'm doing Fedora.
What? So I'm a Linux newbie. I basically know that Ubuntu is kind of the standard for servers. So what is cool about Fedora?
I think a lot of folks that are doing like desktop type stuff, like it seems to be like one of the more stable, user-friendly ones. And I just realized that I wanted to get things done and not like push against the stone of Arch. Now, if you're into that, one advantage of Arch is that it's got the latest stuff. Like it's bleeding edge. But the downside is with the bleeding edge, you get cut. So,
better have some Band-Aids.
I just need things to work and be fast.
Nice.
So,
Micro Center is great.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not from the Minnesota area or whatever, Micro Center is like our computer hardware store that has everything.
Yeah, I walked in, I bought a little tiny Inspiron for $300, and you know what? I was telling Kamran before the show, this little Inspiron with Fedora is running faster than this really super duper Surface Book when I'm doing dev, which is kind of sad, a sad story.
Yeah, Windows is bloated. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
What else have you been working on?
You know, I have been hacking on a new sound manager for Excalibur all day.
Ooh, that'll be nice.
You know, because we tend to write one every game to like mute our to create a mix. Like, you know, you need to like, you know, either boost some audio, decrease some audio, tweak some audio in some way. So you either need to create a mix or you need to like handle muting and unmuting different categories of audio. And that's kind of what I'm building right now. It's just to handle those two use cases where you want to like have a mix because some audio sources you get are way too loud, some are way too quiet. And then a lot of times you're like, well, I want to mute all of the background music, or I want to mute sound effects, or I want to mute everything. Handling all of those use cases.
Yeah, that's really nice because we have literally built a sound manager for every single game. And usually at this point, we just copy and paste the other, the previous sound manager.
Yeah, I have a pretty good idea of what I want out of it. So I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Well, it sounds like your birthday week is off to a good start.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good. I got sushi last night too. I ate too much sushi. So I'm mostly fish at this point.
Our local grocery store has sushi Thursdays. It's like $5 sushi.
It could be dangerous for me.
Well, as you might know, I'm back from vacation. We had a great end to the vacation, so we stayed in Grand Junction for 5 to 6 days. And if you're not familiar with Colorado, this would be on the pretty much exact western side of Colorado. So right on the border. We're only like an hour away from the Utah border. And we chose that location specifically because it's a fairly large city, but it provides really good access to Arches National Park and Canyonlands National Park. And then the Colorado National Monument is also right outside the city. So those were the 3 national park sites that we visited. So those were pretty amazing. Like you've seen, the delicate arch and things like that, like on postcards or on photos, but to see it like in person is like crazy. And the hike up to it is pretty moderate, so we didn't actually do that, but we did do the viewpoints to go see it. And then as you're driving around Arches, you're like driving next to these huge like canyons and stuff. It's really impressive, really cool. And then we also did a day trip to Glenwood Springs, which is they're famous for their hot springs, and so they actually had a really big pool. It's like 2 city blocks wide, huge pool, and They also had mineral baths as well, like thermal hot baths. And then they had a kid zone where the kids could hang out. There's like a splash zone, and they had like a raging river type of ride type of thing.
Oh,
Which
fun.
we initially, we thought it was a lazy river at first, but it's definitely not a lazy river.
That's more angry for sure.
It's more angry, and but the kids did have fun on it. So I think my daughter went on it 3 times, so she really enjoyed it. But the thermal baths were awesome. I think the hot tub, the what they call the therapy pool, was 104 degrees. It was perfect. That was really, really nice.
That's the maximum temperature. That's the maximum temperature that my hot tub can go to. It's 104, and that'll cook you pretty good.
Yeah. So the original hot springs, they have a viewing area where you can see it. That one comes out at 122 degrees. So they actually have to pipe in cooler water, for the rest of the pools, because otherwise that would bake you.
You'd be cooked, literally.
Yep.
TypeScript FM is sponsored by ExcaliburJS, the friendly TypeScript game engine for the web. Like many of you, I got into computers because I loved video games and dreamed of making one, but game development always felt a bit intimidating. Instead, I built a career in web development, though that dream of making games never really went away. Then I met Eric, who showed me I could use my HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills to create games with just a bit of game design knowledge and the right engine. ExcaliburJS makes game development approachable, offering everything you need to build 2D web games. Arcade physics, sprites, animations, input support, and integrations with tools like Tiled and AceSprite. It's beginner-friendly, yet flexible enough to grow with you. Our team has published 10 games using Excalibur, all written in TypeScript. If you're a web developer looking to dip your toes into game dev or sharpen your TypeScript skills, give ExcaliburJS a try at excaliburjs.com. Click the big tutorial button to start building your first game, Excalibur, a Flappy Bird clone. After that, join our friendly Discord community of web developers who love to help each other and share game dev tips.
All right. Well, how about some news?
Yeah, it's time for news of the week of July 14th, 2025. And we got a big headliner, Nuxt 4.0. It's basically Next.js review. And we got a brand new version with a lot of nice to have features. I think there's nothing like that's going to like blow your socks off, but you have, cleaner project org, new app directory structure, better data fetching. They've kind of smoothed out some of the inconsistencies in the API, in the data layer, and improved some performance. Better TypeScript support. They have project-based separation between different contexts in your projects. So you have app code, server code, shared code, configuration code, that kind of stuff. Faster CLI. And I don't know if you heard, but Vercel also acquired Nuxt. So that's new. So I was talking to Cameron. I think maybe we should rename Excalibur to Nextcalibur. Maybe get a payout or something. Just kidding. That's a joke. Just kidding. Nextcalibur is not happening. But I think that Vercel seems to really like things that start with the letter N and end with EXT.
Yeah, so really it would be Nextcalibur.
Yeah,
right?
Nextcalibur. We'd have to add a T in there too.
We'd have to add a T in there.
Yeah, Nextcalibur.
Yeah, well, the team seems excited. Sebastian is the CEO of NuxtLabs and creator of Nuxt, and he's excited. And then that also includes Daniel Rowe, Puya Parsa, and Anthony Fu, who are pretty well known in the open source community. And what's nice is like Vercel has said everything is going to remain independent. It's all going to still be open source. It's all still going to have an MIT license with a public roadmap and open governance. So that's pretty nice. So hopefully that works out for the team.
Yeah, really exciting stuff. And I know a lot of folks on our Discord are super big fans of Vue and Nuxt by extension.
Yeah. I haven't played with Nuxt directly, but I have done a little bit of playing with Vue, and I really enjoy working with Vue.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's the way I explain it, it's kind of like, hey, what if you did kind of React-ish style stuff and Angular style like project composition, and then you're kind of in between those two. It's kind of like you're in between React and you're in between Angular, and then your template is totally different.
Yeah. Yep. Yep, it's pretty nice though. We do have some TSGO news. So in the past few weeks, there hasn't been a lot of user-facing features, but there was a PR merged by Anders, which adds go to definition functionality for the TypeScript language server. So this would be like navigating to definitions for all the different language constructs like overrides, keywords, labels, control flow statements, call expressions, all that kind of stuff. So if you've been using the TypeScript native preview extension in your IDE, this should add go to type definition support for you. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah. Next up, we have a release of Node 24.4 and 24.4.1 with a couple of notable things. There were 2 CVEs headlining this a little bit.
We brought this up in the last episode, but at that point they had not revealed what the CVEs were.
That's right.
Now they published the details for those 2.
Yep. So update your nodes, people. Update your nodes. There's a hash DOS. So what that means is a hash denial of service. Not a good thing for your apps to be denial of service. And also a Windows device name bypass path traversal vulnerability in path.normalize. So there was a way for folks to get through path.normalize and bypass the path traversal protection.
Yeah, that's no good.
No bueno. There was some other stuff too.
I think notably there's some new permission API stuff. So you can do like permission.has. There's also the permission flags. It says they propagate on spawn. So I don't know the details of that, but I wonder if that means spawning on child processes, which would kind of be a big feature. So I don't know much about that. And then looks like they also added some watch mode related flags. So that's kind of cool. Because did you know that Node has a built-in watch now?
I didn't, but now I do.
Yeah. Yep. So you don't need FS watch or whatever it is that you would use to watch files. We've got some meta framework stuff too. Bun. Usually we don't cover every single minor release of Bun because they do release quite a bit. But in Bun 1.2.19, they do add some TypeScript fixes. So I'm just quoting from the blog post so you understand it. The release fixes a long-standing annoyance with Bun's built-in TypeScript types. Previously, global types that exist in both browsers and Node.js-like environments, such as event source, performance, and broadcast channel, were declared with empty interfaces. This allowed them to merge with the DOM's built-in types when you included libdom in your TS config. However, if you did not include the DOM library, then any usage of these interfaces would appear empty, with no properties existing. So now Bun's types are smarter. They detect if libdom is present in your tsconfig JSON, and if it's not, they automatically extend the corresponding Node.js compatible types. So that's kind of nice. So if you're not working on a DOM project that needs libdom, then the Bun's types are going to work better for you. So that's really nice. And finally, in SvelteKit, they published their monthly review post. So what's new in Svelte 2025, July. The latest version of SvelteKit now supports Vite 7 and Rolldown. So compilation should be faster using Rolldown, but with larger bundle sizes. Additional tree shaking is implemented in Rolldown. So that's nice. So a lot of these meta frameworks are upgrading some of their internal dependencies now that we've got Vite 7 and Rolldown coming.
Awesome. Moving on to community highlights. There's a really cool one from Blue Sky user Boshin I think they're on the Void Zero team.
Yep, working on Oxy.
They just posted that oxlint plus tsgolint equals no slowdown. They have no floating promises, completing in 4.4 thousand files in 3.2 seconds in the VS Code repo, which is, if you've never done typeware linting, this is stupendous. This is wild numbers. Like, this is so fast. I think
someone in the thread asks, so how long did it take without tsgolint or like without typeware linting? And I think the response was, I can't even tell you. Like, it's laughable how long it took. So this is probably in orders of magnitude, speed up. There is no speed up because there just wouldn't work before.
Yeah.
So there's no slowdown now, which is amazing. I mean, this is really huge.
This is huge. Jake Bailey in the thread says, "Wow."
Yeah. This is super nice, though, because of what it means for the future, I think is really promising. No pun intended. That we're going to be able to get our cake and eat it, too, with regards to type-aware linting in native TypeScript. So once everything starts to migrate to TSGO, native TypeScript, we'll get native linting as well, and we'll get our type-aware rules, which means even better safety with like code and style, which is super nice. Not just like compiler safety, but also linting safety, which is really nice.
Yeah, this is huge because floating promises, if you're not doing them on purpose, are a very insidious bug to catch because they kind of manifest as like usually timing issues. So they're really insidious unless you're on purpose doing floating and you're like, okay, ignore the floating promise in this line because I'm doing it on purpose. But yeah, that they are truly awful. Ask me how I know. Next on the list from the community highlights is we have Artem's type safe emitter from Artem Zakharchenko. I think that's how you say his name. But this is a type safe event emitter, and it's a marriage of event target and event emitter, what we should have always had in TypeScript. It's super great. It's what you want out of an emitter. And if you've ever kind of struggled to strongly type your event emitters, check this out. Super cool. It's doing a lot of things that I've done in TypeScript in many other repos, and it's just kind of got all of the niceties that you would want.
Yeah, and if you are familiar with Artem's work, he, I believe, works with Kent C. Dodds and a lot of the Epic web courses and stuff that Kent has been working on for the past few years. So Artem has published a few courses on like testing, I think. So that's really cool.
Yeah, super cool. Check it out. I think the TypeSafe event emitter is called Runtime, and I think that's the name of the package on NPM as well. So if you want to go NPM install Runtime, that's the
sounds good.
TypeSafe event emitter. Next on the list is a blog post deep dive into TypeScript's type inference system from the SharpCoderBlog, and it kind of goes through how the type inference in TypeScript works. And it's a really short article, but it gets across the points very quickly. So definitely check that out.
Was there something in there that made you go, "Oh, I did not know that. That's how it worked"?
You know, not really. But I think if you were new to TypeScript, this might be interesting to you.
That's cool. Yeah, nice.
This one came across my desk, and I had no idea that this was even possible. But there is a new library from Arktype, @arc@test. You can test type completions in TypeScript. So like if you're like, oh, part of the feature of your library that you're building might be the type completions that you offer, like on a typed API, you can now test that with this, which is super cool. Like
that is neat.
You can test those things, which is really neat. It can also deterministically report the number of type instantiations that contributed to the type inference. So you can do that in the bench call. So you can be like, oh, we were talking earlier how Arktype really improved the performance of their TypeScript types. I imagine this tool helped because they can actually measure that with this tool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Actually, if you are doing some high performance TypeScript benchmarking and stuff, you probably want to take a look at this because type instantiations are probably the number one contributor to like build time. So if you can reduce those, so what gets measured gets improved, right? So if you can measure your type instantiations, then you could probably reduce them.
Yeah. There was Eric Clemens posted on this thread, literally smiling by how cool this is. And I think that's so true. Like David really kicked it out of the park here because this is so neat.
Yeah, that's super neat. One article that came across my desk as I was reading through the Svelte July update is that Puru Vijay wrote a blog post on type-safe persistence and auto-theming in Svelte 5. Now, one thing that I've consistently heard, but we have yet to really dive deep into, is that Svelte and TypeScript seem to be a really good developer experience from the folks that have been doing it. I've seen lots of people sing their praises. So this, I think, if you're in the Svelte community, you want to take a look at this. So go take a look at that. blog post. I haven't done too much Svelte, so I can't comment too much on it, but just want to bring that to your attention if you're in that community.
Nice. Something near and dear to our hearts. There's a new video from Plaza about Type GPU called Your GPU is a JavaScript Runtime, which is super cool. And it's kind of a deep dive. It's a recording of a talk he gave about how to use Type GPU. And it's really neat. And you can go into looking at like, okay, what is this doing for you? It simplifies your integration with Three.js or TensorFlow. You can enhance performance of your certain apps. You can make just GPU programming more accessible. So it's really cool. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, he gave that talk at Render Atlanta. And I believe in the last episode, we mentioned Trash Dev's WTF TypeScript talk. He also gave that, I think, at Render Atlanta. So you probably want to go to the Render Atlanta YouTube channel and go check out some of the other talks because what's coming out of there is pretty sweet.
Excellent. Next up, I don't know if you know, but DHH hates TypeScript.
Doesn't he hate everything though?
He does have a lot of strong opinions about a lot of things. But I included the clip because I thought it was a good listen. It's always good to listen to the criticism, but yeah, I think his major hang-up is it's not bringing him the things that are important to him. So he doesn't really care about auto-completion, and he doesn't really care about types. He just cares about writing code. So that's what he cares about, and it gets in the way of that for him.
Sure. Yep. To each their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting because I also read a tweet today in the feed where someone did not like TypeScript, but they were saying that it's basically just them working on something. And they were like, well, I can see how it could be useful if you're working on a team with a big code base and you have a lot of legacy code and you want to make sure that contracts are stable and stuff like that. But I just want to like write the code and I don't want to have to deal with all these types. And so I think it's a valid criticism. Like TypeScript is for application scale JavaScript. If you're not writing application scale JavaScript, then maybe TypeScript is not the best fit. I mean, I personally prefer to use it even if I'm working individually, but that's just me. If you are not that way, then that's fine.
Yeah, totally. Next, there was an interesting post by our good friend, Dr. Axel Roschmeyer, talking about how both Node and Deno are working on this permissions for the network access stuff. And he asks a really good question that I think we've all kind of thought in the back of our heads, or maybe even said out loud, is like, well, wouldn't it be cool if I could isolate those permissions on like a per file basis or a per module basis? And the thread is actually really interesting, and it talks about why that's kind of hard right now. And I think I'll have to go and dig for it, but I think Ryan Dahl also talks about why that's hard to do in like V8 in particular. So there was a really interesting discussion in this thread about why that's not the case right now for both Node and Deno, where you'd be like, oh, that would be super useful. And I totally agree. That would be extremely useful, especially from like a security lens. So two folks that chimed in on that were James Snell was talking about using shadow realms, which might be a better way of doing isolated contexts for bits of code that you don't necessarily trust. So you can do a shadow realm, which is like another, you can kind of think of a realm as like an execution context. I'm like, you can't see my hands, but you can think of a realm. This is not quite
like
right.
A boundary.
You can think of it as like, this is my kingdom, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like kind of like a Kerberos realm, if you've ever had the misfortune of working with Kerberos. But you kind of have this boundary where you can think of it as, you know, this separate area. But he also noted that it's not necessarily good to think of it as a secure container. So there's some complexity there, maybe using shadow realms to do this. And then Chris Cowell also mentioned that there are two proposals that might help this as well. There's the import hook proposal, which allows the user's code to choose whether or not an import is satisfied by the host module system. And you can do like, you can replace it with a mock. So you can maybe see how a mock might be useful for like implementing like a security layer, or you could just deny it outright. So this is like what it sounds like. You can hook into the import and decide whether or not you want to do something with the import. And then there's a related proposal, which is a new global. Like it's what it sounds like. You can new up a new global. So Like right now, you just kind of have this ambient global in whatever runtime
Yeah.
context you're in. But what would be really cool is if you can make a new global that just had like maybe a subset of things that, you know, is either like you want to like say, hey, this functionality is no longer available to you. Like there's no way to fetch. Like this fetching is gone. Or you might have a, domain specific language like, Mocha or Jest or Jasmine, where there's these new functions that just exist ambiently on a global. So it's kind of neat. It's like a cool idea. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's really neat. I've got one from Greg Rosenbaum. He has a blog post that I saw on Reddit that was treating types as values with type level maps. And so he kind of explains, well, what is a type level map? And it's essentially like it's a type. It can be an interface or a type annotation that enumerates the keys and then the values of a map. So one example that he gives that where type level maps are useful and that we actually do the same exact thing in Excalibur is on events. So you might have an event map, which means like you might have a click event, you might have a drag event. Each of those events might have different properties that go with that event, like what it was, it the primary button that was clicked or the right button or the right mouse button that was clicked, etc. And so each event has different parameters, but you have the same API to hook into them, right? So you have like an on API event, an off API event. And so you might want to listen to all those events. And inside of the callback, you want that to be strongly typed. Like you don't want to have to manually say, I'm listening to the click event and it has this, event object. And so you can use a type level map to strongly type that for the end user where they don't have to explicitly type anything. And so all they have to do is listen to the right event and the right event object gets passed as the second parameter automatically. And that's what we do with Excalibur to make the event handling strongly typed and a bit easier on the end user. So definitely want to check that out if that seems interesting to you. And then there was a question on Blue Sky posed by Kyle Shevlin, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but Eric, return types on functions, yay or nay? Where do you stand?
That in application code, so if you're writing an app or you're building an app, you're working with your team, you're doing something, the answer is almost always don't put return types on functions unless there's a really good reason to. Like I think they brought up tuples in there.
Yeah, tuples. And
then the only other time is like if you're banking a library that you're sharing with other teams, because now that type is part of your API contract and you want to know when you break it accidentally. So if you type your return types, you'll know immediately.
Yes. Yep. I pretty much agree. There could be a nuance there with like, even if you're not on a team, but you're writing code that needs to be stable and used in multiple places, it essentially is treated as like an internal library. Then you might still want to have explicit return types. But otherwise, I definitely lean on Inference for pretty much everything.
Nice. The Software Engineering Daily podcast, they had Jake Bailey and a friend of the show, Josh Goldberg, on to talk about TypeScript. So definitely check that out. Looks like a pretty cool episode. Nice. Well, we got some cool links. I had a couple of cool things come across my desk. First up is if you're afraid of vendor lock-in and you want to try a different vendor to lock into, there's a new open source alternative to Vercel, Netlify, and Heroku called Dokploy, written in TypeScript, and it does things like you might expect. You can deploy applications, database backup, Docker Compose, all that kind of stuff that you normally are expecting from these other providers. You can just self-host your own platform as a service, and it's written in TypeScript. So check that out. I have not run it myself, so buyer beware. But it looked interesting, and it was written in TypeScript. So I was like, oh, this is super cool.
All I can say about the option of like self-hosting stuff is that it sounds great on paper, and then you do it, and then you realize, what I'm paying for? I'm paying these people to maintain this for me over the next 5 years, because otherwise it's just me running updates and trying to migrate to new versions. And it's I mean, you pay for maintenance. That's what you're paying for when you buy from vendors. But certainly there's a case to be made for doing some kind of multi-platform play. Or if you have a team or something that you want to maintain your own platform as a service, then, then you can build on top of these open source projects. But if you're an individual, sometimes it just makes sense to pay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, definitely I am a huge fan of Netlify. I have been using them for my static sites forever, and it's super slick. If you are into retrofuturism and like kind of cyberpunk stuff, I have a really fun YouTube video by YouTuber AutoParsec where he takes like an old like punch card toy and converts it into like a Cyberdeck, and it's super cool. Like my nostalgia activated, and I really want this toy. I want it. But it's super cool. He like retrofitted it with like a I think it was a Raspberry Pi and like his own screen, and he had a whole bunch of games in it, and like this toy had only 8 buttons, so the user interface used these 8 buttons to interact with it. It's so cool.
That's funny.
Definitely watch that if you're into that. If you need more Vite. Did I just say Vite?
Oh, you did it.
I did it.
You just said it.
I said it. I said the wrong thing. If you need more Vite news in your life, straight from the horse's mouth, Evan Yu presented at the Git Nation series of conferences talking about what's new. So I know we've been covering it a lot, but he's talking about kind of the whole business plan to have that unified toolchain for JavaScript and how they're doing that. And then he even does talk about Vite Plus and some of the plans for the future in Vite Plus. So definitely check that out in that YouTube video.
Sweet.
And then kind of a silly one, or maybe not silly if you're into this, but you can put Windows in your app with winbox.js. So,
hold on. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
So if you are like, what I really like? I really like having like Windows with like a little X bar, like maximize, minimize, but I want that in my web app. Like and there might be, generally speaking in most of the web, you probably don't want this, but if you're building like a tool, this might actually be for you. So like, it's not an emulator of like Microsoft Windows or anything like that.
Okay.
It's giving you like these like nice little floating windows that look like,
I see.
That look like, you could put something in them. And if you were building.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is like dialogues on steroids.
Yeah.
They're like actual windows that you can move around and do stuff with. You can manipulate them. Okay.
I'd argue 99% of the time you don't need something like this.
Right.
But if you are building stuff like I am, you might be like, actually, I kind of need like docking windows. I kind of need to have a UI that can be rearranged inside of my app.
Yep.
So this might be the thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're building a studio editor to build a game, you're going to have dialogues in there. And so, like, it would be nice to be able to, like, move them around.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You read my mind.
That's cool. So I think there are other things like this. Didn't we talk once about, like, a React window layout manager? I think there are, if you search for, like, window layout managers, you'll find stuff like this. But this is really cool. This one, what is it called again? Winbox?
Yeah, it's winbox.js.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Since I've been on vacation, I've only been on my computer like the last 2 days, so I haven't really come across anything too interesting, but I put an oldie but a goodie in here because I do think about this quite a lot. Ever since I read this blog post, which was like 5 or 6 years ago, I always think about it occasionally, especially when I'm making big purchases. But it's called How Understanding the Marginal Utility of Money Will Make You Happier. So the easiest way to think about this is that money can buy some amount of happiness, and then after that, it depreciates. Like it's a what kind of curve is this, Eric?
This is logarithmic.
Logarithmic curve. It basically buys less happiness the more money you spend. So the curve flattens out near the top, and there's questionable benefits. So I think a really good example of this that came into play for me recently was when I bought my MacBook M1. I bought it used, so like refurbished. And I think if you initially think about that, you're like, well, why don't you just buy the M4 brand new? But the thing is that I was upgrading from like an Intel Core i6 laptop that was built in like I don't know, 2010 or something. And so the jump from that to an M1 is massive. So the marginal utility of that is huge, but the marginal utility of an M1 compared to an M4 is much, much less. And so it didn't make any sense for me to pay another $3,000 for that utility. But what it did make sense was to spend $1,500 to upgrade to an M1 and get that huge jump in productivity and happiness, basically, from my new machine, which I am super happy with. Plus, I was able to get way more than what I could buy brand new because I got like 64 gigabytes of RAM and like a 2 terabyte hard drive or something, which would cost an arm and a leg if you're customizing that straight from Apple. So anyway, I think about this marginal utility of money a lot when I'm making really big purchases. So what I usually do is I pick sort of the mid-tier level thing because that's what's going to provide the biggest jump in utility and like happiness, and not spend so much more for like not a whole lot more. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Actually, that kind of rings, that story about the M1 that you got kind of rings true with the laptop that I just bought for $300. It's got a 1 terabyte disk and 32 gigs of RAM for $300, and it's like legit. It is a faster dev machine than my Windows machine that I paid $3,000 for. So like by a factor of 10, it's also much faster for writing software, which is why I got it, so that I could just run Fedora on it. Now, there's certain things that the Windows machine is only going to be able to do because it's the only one that can do like the AV stuff I need to do, and it's the only stuff that can do the graphic stuff I need to do. But honestly, I'm usually not doing that stuff. I'm usually writing software. So I have this Fedora laptop, this refurbished Dell Inspiron, which is legit faster, like noticeably faster to do things on.
Love it. Well, I think that is an episode.
I think that's a show. See you next time.
See ya.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to typescript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at kamranigas.com, and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.
I feel like, Josh, I know you're listening. I feel like a podcast titled Josh and Jake on Types would be kind of a cool podcast name.
Yeah.
Just the Jake and Josh. Maybe I'm thinking of like Drake and Josh from like Disney Channel, but like Jake and Josh. It sounds nice.
I think Drake and Josh was Nick, wasn't it? Nickelodeon?
Was it Nickelodeon?
Oh,
yeah,
knows?
whatever.
They were kind of in the same zone, same vibe.
I didn't really grow up too much with that. That was a little bit after I stopped watching like Nickelodeon and stuff, but I do remember that, yeah. Anyway,